So while I'm looking for this, I'm going to start the session. So our workshop, Gary and I's workshop, is about dealing with assholes through play. That's specifically at work. So one thing, and actually Kathy can also account for this, is that we were always wondering why when we would do all these collaborative, creative, team building type workshops, we would see all these people dealing with every issue except for the a-hole issue. Just wanted to let you know that I will be using the word a-hole, asshole, a lot of vulgar type words. So if that offends you, I completely understand if you can't continue to watch this, but I would recommend that you at least give it a little chance. So when Gary and I were running a ton of these workshops, we were like, the biggest issue that we kept running into was the fact that no one was addressing the a-hole issue. So we were like, how do we eradicate a-holes from the workplace? And when we were lucky enough to run this in Australia just a month ago, and then we were about to run it for a South by Southwest, the idea was, how do we get this involved into every single one of Fortune 500 companies, because this is a really big issue. Now, it seems like it's going to even be a bigger issue now that we're working virtually. And this is part of the reason why I wore my Team Everybody shirt today, because frankly, especially with everyone so stressed out and this idea that we have to all be in it together, the last thing that we need to be dealing with is a toxic person in the workplace. So first off, I would like for you to take a moment to visualize that a-hole that you have at your job. Just think about what that person looks like. How does it feel when you see them? And then I want you to figure out, what is it that they say that just bothers you? You know, is it that they're like, I'm not very impressed by your work? Is it that they cut you off? Like, what is it that just frustrates you so much about that a-hole? All right. So then just take a moment and just feel how that feels on you. And like that, like, like, I don't want to go to work today. Oh, I hate when that person comes to the office. Or now virtually, oh gosh, why is this person on this call? Now, shake that off for just a moment, because that just like that energy is so ugh. And now I want you to think of someone at your work that you admire, someone that you appreciate, someone that when you are really struggling, when it's very hard day or it's a very hard week, or especially during this time, you just feel really stressed out, you're able to go to them. And just think about how you feel when you're around that person. What is that like? What are the things that they say to you that keep you going? And then I want you to just compare and contrast those two feelings. What we want to do, hopefully by the end of this workshop, is to give you at least the tools so you can feel more like the second version than the first. It's not that you're going to be able to just completely remove all issues when it comes to dealing with a-holes, but you will at least have some tools that you can actually start to apply. So just to give you a background, this is Gary, who is actually celebrating with his son right now. And then I am Jeff Harry. Both of us have been running team building workshops and consulting and working with Fortune 500 companies for the last decade, specifically around collaboration, creativity, and play. Kathy Klotz, who's actually on this call, also does something very similar to us. Here, let me move this so you can see me a little bit. And what we really wanted to do was we wanted to create a way in which you could address a really toxic subject like this in a playful, fun, experiential sort of way. And then that's what we've created that we're about to show you, or I'm about to show you. All right, so the a-hole objectives, the things that we actually wanted to cover for today are this: clarity about what makes an a-hole, you know, what are the attributes of an a-hole, experience different types of situations where an a-hole is present, and then how do we deal with that person. Third is learn techniques to diffuse the situation. Not even so much diffuse the a-hole, but diffuse the situation that you're dealing with that a-hole. And then the thing that we want to really address are like, what are the type of a-hole challenges that you're dealing with? Many of them that come up to us are, this person takes up all of the space during our meetings. This person, every time I see them, I just get this cringy feeling and I don't want to work as hard. Or when I wake up in the morning, I know this person's going to be there. So I'm like, I don't want to go to work. So what are those like a-hole challenges that you're currently dealing with? Now, we're not full experts on the a-hole issue. We've only have like 20 years of experience, but from our research, what we have found is that inside a team, an a-hole does exist. It's right in the eye of team. So you have to address that first. And it's very important to recognize it's whoever is making it about themselves. That is typically the a-hole. That is what we've found. And we're not proctologists, but we know an a-hole when we see one. I'm sure you also have much experience yourself dealing with this type of issue. This is usually the summary or disclaimer that we put on, that we are providing professional advice, but we do recommend, if you want to talk to us in more detail about stuff, feel free to reach out to us afterwards. We'll give you our information after the. All right, so does your organization suffer from a-holitis? Let's talk about the various versions of a-holitis, the type of people that might show up at your job. So of course, we first have jerkitis, the person that is super mean. Everything that comes out of their mouth is just so insulting. Those are the people that when they're walking down the hall, you just want to turn the other way. They suffer from jerkitis. Then we have people that are arrogant. They suffer from a flu, also known as the I'm better than you flu. They carry themselves with an air as if whatever you're saying isn't really important to them. Then, of course, you have the self-righteous, the people that are always right no matter what. They will fight you even when they know they're wrong. They will continue to fight you simply because they always need to know that they are right. And then, of course, you have entitled, the never needed to work for anything disease. That's what they suffer from. And they usually have been at a job for a really long time, or maybe they are affiliated with the CEO and somehow, so there's no way in which they're going to get fired, but they carry themselves with a certain level of entitlement and almost have forgotten how to work hard and just think everything comes to them very easily. And then we have two more. We have dismissive. They're usually seen at classes and also at meetings, where regardless of the idea that you bring up, they dismiss it outright. And then finally, we have the ambivalent, the frenemy disorder. And what we have found from our research is this is actually the most challenging and stressful of all the a-holes, because sometimes they're really happy and nice, and cordial, and then other times they just flip it on you. So you don't know when to trust them and when not to trust them. And that just can really grate on you over a long period of time. So usually in these workshops, we ask, what are the triggers for you about your a-hole at work? Because that is a crucial part of being able to deal with them in the first place. You have to know what is triggering you. Is it when they cut you off? Is it when they dismiss your ideas? Is it simply the fact that they're in the room? Is it that there's a lot of toxic masculinity? They're super nice to many of the men, but they're so rude to all the women. Like, what is it that is triggering you? Because once you're able to identify what that trigger is, then you're going to be able to be like, okay, this is what triggers me, and this is how I'm going to handle it. Then you have to think about, how does dealing with the a-hole then affect your work? And this is actually really important to know, because you want to know what impact it's having on you, what impact it's having on your staff, so that when you are talking about this with other people in your organization, especially potentially the higher ups, you can reference these things. I am getting less than 50% of my work done because this person is being this way. I notice that a lot of our staff aren't showing up to work on a regular basis because they have to deal with this person. Or I notice that a lot of people check out during the meeting because this person is talking the entire time. So that's what you have to recognize, is how in the world is it affecting your actual work? Now, what was super interesting when we started researching this, we found out a fascinating study that actually showed that a-holes make you stupider. They actually make the organization stupider. They did this study at a university where they had students come to, I believe, take some survey type test. And the first group that came, they had a sign, and the sign said, oh, the test has been moved, or the survey, and please go to this other room. That's it, very simple. And a lot of people went to that other room to take that test. The second group, they had the group of people, when they came, the teacher met them at the door of the first place and was like, what are you guys doing? You're so stupid. Like, why are you here? Obviously, it's not happening in this room. Did you not get the email? It's in this room. And just doing that subtle amount of insulting, that's all they did. And then they went and took the test. And they found that people that were in the second group that were insulted more were 30% more productive on that test. They scored 30% less simply because someone insulted them before they actually took the test. And you have to think about that with your organization and with your staff. Every time that person is dismissed, every time that person is insulted, that is dramatically affecting their work. And the reason why I'm also bringing this up is it's also really important to tell the other people that are making decisions at your organization, because what we also found through a SHRM study was that a-holes right now are costing businesses, just in the last 5 years, $223 billion based off of just turnover. People that are quitting, and then they reference why they're quitting. They're referencing it's because of this toxic person that I had to deal with in the workplace. Now, this has only happens over the last 5 years. And you also have to take in consideration that a lot of people probably did not write why they were quitting. These are only the amount of people that actually mentioned or were willing to mention it was because of this toxic person at the workplace as to why I left. So you got to know and communicate to your higher ups that this is a massive issue. And when they bring up the brilliant jerk idea, which we've talked about before on many of our videos, this idea of like, well, that person might be an a-hole, but they bring in so much money. They're so what if they're a jerk? They are so productive. Look at their quarter results. And what you have to challenge them on is, what is more important, the team or the brilliant jerk? And what Simon Sinek talks about a lot most recently is he talks about the Navy SEALs and how they actually seek out the brilliant jerk to remove from their teams. And they would rather take someone that is less talented, less productive, because that person is part of the team and is willing to watch out for everyone else on the team. And if you're willing to pick the brilliant jerk, you're going to destroy the team in the process. So those are just some of the points that you can make when you're like, why should we actually address this a-hole or eradicate this a-hole from our job? So this would be the time in which we would actually have an interactive play session, but being that it is virtual, and then we have a dance break because, that is part of what we do. But just to give you a little teaser of what we typically do during our time of play aspect is then what we have is we actually have people embody the a-hole. We actually break up the groups into 3 different ones. We have a group of 3 people, And what we have is we have one person that is going, almost as if we're in a meeting, and one person is going to pitch this idea, and it's going to be the idea for the best vacation ever. And it's unlimited budget, unlimited time, unlimited spending. You can go anywhere, and their job is to pitch this idea to the other two people in the group. And then the other two people are supposed to act out as the actual a-hole. Then we just start. And usually it's just like, oh, I have this great idea. Oh, I think we should go to Aruba once the virus is over. I think we should, we could have mimosas on the beach, and we could go sailing. We could do all these things. And then, of course, then the a-holes will know, like, no, that's too expensive. I know we have unlimited budget, but I don't really like Aruba. And it just dismisses that person. So we do that as the first controlled group. And then we typically ask that person, how's it feel? How's it feel to just get your ideas just said completely no to? Then we do it again. And then the second time we have the second person in the group where they now are pitching the ideas, best vacation ever, unlimited budget, unlimited time spending. And the other two people will say yes, but they will say yes, but. So they'll be like, oh, I want to go to Aruba. It's going to be amazing. We'll have mimosas and the sailboat. And they're like, yes, but, we might still be dealing with this, COVID-19 issue. Or yes, but I don't like mimosas. Or yes, but I just feel like this is a bit, indulgent. And then we would ask the people afterwards, so how does it feel? What is worse? Is it worse to just be said no to, or is it worse to get a yes, but? And it's fascinating what we get back, because some people are like, actually, some of them say it's worse because they're like, well, I think I might have an opportunity, and then I get a but. Or the other person's like, oh, it was possible, but no. And then others are just like, no, it's actually more mean when I just hear the straight no. And then finally, the last group, we do a strategy that is taught in improv. Kathy knows a lot about this, as well as Gary, of a yes and, where we actually have people do yes anding, where you go, okay, I think we're going to go to Aruba, and someone's like, yes, that's an amazing idea. And then after that, we'll go to Australia. Yes, that's an amazing idea. And after that, we'll go hiking to a waterfall made out of mimosas. Yes. And this is actually an interesting technique, because you can actually do this at the beginning of your meetings to prime yourself and prime the meeting and get everyone on the same page. And we do it to actually have people feel, what is it like to have everyone agree? And the reason why we have this done is just so people can feel like, what? Oh, this is such a great feeling. How do we strive for this feeling? We're not going to be able to get it all the time, but can we get closer? Is there a way in which we can get closer? And it's like, yes. So how do we get closer? What we need to do is we need to tackle the a-hole issue head on. So then we get straight into the solutions. Okay, so we've broken this down into 4 solutions. There are many different solutions, but in the interest of time, we have these specific 4. So the first one that I like to do, and usually this works 20 to 30% of their time, depending on certain situations, is we found that if you're able to redirect the a-hole's energy in another way, that actually helps dramatically. So say, for example, that a-hole is really good at dismissing people and dismissing ideas during a meeting. What then we would recommend is that you would go up to that person beforehand and go, look, we are going to yes and for the first 80 to 90% of this meeting. And then you are going to be the voice of reason that is going to address our ideas after we've formulated them. And then you can, poke holes through them. Or even better, let me not waste your time with the meeting. We're going to yes and brainstorm all these ideas, and then I'm going to come to you afterwards, and I will bring up these ideas, and then you can poke holes in them, because we still want your feedback, but we don't want it at this time. It's not going to be the most effective way in which to get this meeting done. And actually now we free up an hour of your time to do it. That works some of the time, and we recommend it that is like an initial step forward. If that doesn't work, we recommend the much bigger challenge. This one works typically 50 to 60% of the time. And this is where you're actually organizing to address and challenge the a-hole. So this is actually going to be really important during virtual meetings because the game has now changed. People are not in the room. The energy might be different. So let's say you have an a-hole that takes up 80 to 90% of the talking during an entire meeting. What we recommend is that you organize beforehand. You talk to all of your colleagues beforehand, and you're like, look, we are going to take up more of that meeting. You know, Sam, if you bring up an issue or you bring up an idea, I'm going to back you up on that idea. Lisa, I'm going to back you up on your idea. We're going to make sure that we fill the space up so that a-hole cannot take up that space. And this is something that is not going to happen just in one meeting. You're going to have to do this over months and slowly, almost like war, slowly take up more and more space in the meeting. And if more and more people are agreeing with Alyssa's idea, and you have like 7 out of the 10 people agree with Alyssa's idea, maybe that a-hole may take a step back because they're like, well, maybe I don't want to, you know, I'm in the minority here. So that is one other way in which you can challenge them. Another way in which you could challenge them is you could come at it directly. And that is actually approaching them after the meeting. And this is something that you might approach with, you do with a colleague, or you do it after you've practiced. This is typically what we do in our workshop where we'll practice it out, where you would come up to that person afterwards and you'd be like, all right, look, I understand what were you trying to do in that meeting, but when you dismissed Alyssa's idea, I feel like what happened was not only did you insult her, but then you also prevented all of us from sharing ideas as well. Now, I'm not saying that I'm blaming you for this, but what I'm seeing is the impact. And that's the part that you have to really express, is that I'm not attacking you. I am attacking the behavior, and I'm trying to address the impact that it's having. When you dismissed Alyssa's idea, this is what happened. You can also address it the Brene Brown way, is like, well, the story I'm telling myself when I saw you do this is this. I really want to understand, was that your motive? Was that what you were trying to do? Were you trying to communicate in that way? Because I want to make sure that we're on the same page. And then they can come back at you. They might come back at you and be like, oh, no, I wasn't trying to do that at all. I'm so sorry. Probably not, but that may be a possibility. Another one would be like, yeah, whatever. I don't really care about Alyssa's feelings. And you'd be like, okay, but here's another thing. If you want us to get this done, then maybe you're going to have to care. And maybe you're going to have to do these things. And frankly, if you approach it in a different way, we might be able to get more work done. And frankly, we might be able to be more productive. And then we might all be more successful because of it. So you can challenge them directly. If they still dismiss you, at that point, that's when you have to go towards your boss. And you have to address the issue directly with the boss. Now, that can be an issue because if that a-hole has a boss that's also an a-hole, that is something that is really hard to deal with as well. But you have to be able to go to your higher ups or the person above your higher ups if you feel like you can't go directly to your boss and be like, listen, this is the impact that it's having on the organization. It's having on the staff. We're talking about $223 billion. So thinking about the amount of turnover that might happen because of this person, or in this virtual space where maybe you're not dealing with turnover, but you're dealing with a lot of people that will not be very motivated to do their work once they come off of a virtual call, then you're really stating that impact to the boss and be like, is this what you want in your organization? You go back to the core values that rooted in the organization. You're like, this is, what do you want to do here? And if that person is an asshole and that person's boss is an asshole, and you've gone to the next person and that also is, and they support, that is what they have chosen to support. They've chosen to support the brilliant jerk. I hate to say it, but that is at the time when you realize my core values and their core values do not match. And we try to avoid that as much as possible. We want to address it before then, and we want to come in from an empathetic place. But there's a time when you finally will realize that maybe you're just not on the same page. Finally, and this is the biggest way in which you can address the a-hole at work, it is to really first address the inner critic. So part of the reason that a-hole is triggering you is there's something psychologically that you are allowing to be internalized within you when that a-hole attacks you. Somehow, some way, wherever that is coming from, you're believing what they have to say. When they dismiss you, when they say you're stupid, when they say, you're not good enough for this job, you shouldn't have gotten promoted. All those things go in and you internalize them. And the fact of the matter is, if you left this job and you went to another job, you might have another a-hole there. Then you'd be like, oh, well, then I'm going to leave that job to go to another job. And you might have another a-hole there. And as long as you have that inner a-hole, that inner critic that is super loud, that keeps telling you stuff that you do not want to hear, then it's going to be very difficult for you to challenge outside. So what we recommend is you have to recognize what is the inner critic saying, really addressing that. I run another workshop about playing with your inner critic, where you literally are writing down what is it that my inner critic is saying and actually naming the inner critic. And then once you're able to recognize, oh, those are my triggers, and draw that boundary, then you can say, oh, wait a minute, that's my inner critic talking. That is not me. I don't deserve to be treated this way. And then when you've grounded yourself like that, the next time that a-hole comes at you and says something, you can be like, look, Chad, don't speak to me that way. I'm not going to tolerate that anymore. Because the fact is they're going to continue to bully until someone says no. And if you are able to say that either in the meeting or afterwards, and other colleagues see that, then they also might gain a certain level of bravery, a permission to also stand up and also be like, Chad, I don't want to take that either. None of us like your attitude, Chad. You're going to have to change this. And if you're thinking, oh, I don't know if that's going to work, I've seen it work firsthand. It took many years. It took many ups and downs, but it took many of us setting a boundary with this individual. And finally, when this individual noticed that they couldn't get their work done a certain way, noticed that they were losing respect in the organization, they had a choice. They either were going to quit or change their attitude. They started going to therapy. They started recognizing their anger management issues because they realized they could not operate in a certain way. And as long as we don't set those boundaries, they are able to just run amok. They're able to just do whatever they want. And I think that's the part where we must stop it really early on is to just make sure that that type of behavior is not allowed within your workplace and within the boundary that you're working in, and then empower others to actually do that as well. And then finally, what we usually do at our workshops is then we actually have people play it out. So we have someone describe their situation that they're dealing with. Who is this a-hole that they have? And then we actually work through it and we play it out over and over again, where we have that hard conversation. And then after we have that hard conversation, we switch and we do it again, and we do it multiple times until someone feels like, wait a minute, I can have this conversation. I've played out the scenario enough times that I feel comfortable enough to at least say this. And if I don't feel comfortable enough to say it by myself, I feel comfortable enough that I can bring my colleague in and we can address this together. Because frankly, especially now that we're dealing with this pandemic, we really have to all be in it together. And the only way in which to do that is to eradicate a-holes from the world.